feel like there needs to be a background music option for Zoom, right? Like you're waiting for the meeting to start. You should be able to play some sort of, maybe something light like Metallica or Dokken or, some Rolling Stones. I just feel like that'd be a good thing.
Okay.
How long ago did your meeting just end?
I did. I had to then make myself a little bit of breakfast.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw me making Caitlin's breakfast while we were having the last meeting.
Yeah. I did not.
Jessica, thanks for joining us this morning.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be on.
We already had the board already had their fill of David this morning for 30 minutes. Can only take so much of him in a day.
I just aspire to be the new and improved version of David on this call.
Excellent. Well, the secret to this is the meeting starts at 10 and we always start at 10:02. Jewish Standard Time. Giving everyone the ability to go, oh, wait, it's a little after 10. I better sign into that 10 o'clock Zoom.
Hence the need for your Metallica hold music.
Exactly.
I like the thought of Metallica hold. That's something.
Yeah, All right, well, it's 10:02, so we'll commence with our traditional start time. And look, people are still joining as usual. So great to see everyone this morning. We don't have, I don't think, a big agenda today. I am, obviously thrilled that what we are not talking about this morning is anything having really happened yesterday as far as results of any behavior that we wouldn't want to see from people. It appears that did not happen. For those of you that are on Scott's alert, and he can maybe talk about that. There were some alerts that went out, turned out to be nothing, but he can cover all of that. And so I didn't know if anybody had any specific questions for me. Oh, I just got a message, how to share music. All right, how to play music on your live stream on Zoom. Okay, I'm going to learn how to do this. So you may be in store for some interesting music next week, possibly.
All right, so
Ryan, you're up.
Right. I want to remind everyone of a couple of the, hold on, I'm going to pull it up, that we have a couple of different, scheduled discussions happening over the next couple of weeks. Can I share my screen or can I not? I can. So just to remind everyone, last week, obviously, Nava presented. Next week, Bert Garland, an HR attorney and board member of the Federation, is going to be joining us to answer questions and discuss HR issues around vaccinations. This is a topic that you guys brought up, or some of you brought up as wanting to talk about. He's going to talk with us and answer questions. A couple weeks after that, we are going to have Chancellor Martin from WashU joining us to talk about WashU, what WashU is doing around this pandemic and in the community. And then, as we talked about with Nava last week, the capacity building survey identified 3 different areas where organizations felt like they needed support and help, which we have put together some webinars around. They are going to be on Wednesdays at noon for you, your professional and volunteer leadership to attend, as many people as you like. In order to make room for that, make sure that people are able to attend, we are canceling our Thursday calls the day after each of those so that nobody has to choose. And that's Thursday, February 25th, Thursday, March 18th, and Thursday, April 8th. As soon as Anna Marie comes back from medical leave, we will get them officially off of your calendars. You can certainly take those individual ones off. And yeah. if you'd like. Scott, did you have anything that you wanted to share just about yesterday or in general?
So for those of you that are on the community security liaison list, you probably received from me a series of updates throughout the day yesterday. I thought our community did an excellent job along with our law enforcement partners, our intelligence community and partners in terms of monitoring the threat, the potential threat. We did have some incidents that we were monitoring. We were monitoring the Capitol constantly. We actually had someone on the ground there. There was no activity there, no activity to speak of, small numbers of protesters and generally even smaller numbers at any one time. So maybe a total of 20 protesters throughout the day, with 6 being the largest grouping of people there, and no actual incidents, no actual concerns coming out of that. We did have a suspicious device that was observed and located at a Missouri Department of Transportation district office, which just happened to be about a half a mile away from United Hebrew. So we were obviously concerned about that. Daryl Rothman and I were in communication the entire time with regards to that incident, and we were able to determine through our sources that the item was a temperature gauge. But nonetheless, it was taken seriously, and St. Louis County Bomb and Arson handled that. Other than that, we were pleasantly surprised with the way the both the DC festivities for inauguration went, as well as no activity at any of the state capitals to speak of.
Thank you.
And also one last thing, some of you may have noticed that we also enacted our community security patrol again in those areas where we did not have a law enforcement presence, specifically at the sites. So we were doing some of our schools and doing brief checks at some of the synagogues, although many of them were closed, but the schools were open and we were checking those as well. So we added that component as well, and then encouraged others to have off-duty law enforcement at their sites, which they did.
Any specific questions around this? I want to make sure that Jessica gets a chance to give the update from Jeff City and other things before we get into a more general conversation, so that she can get off if she needs or wants to. But any specific questions around security from yesterday, we can have a broader conversation in a couple of minutes about whatever you guys like. All right, so David isn't able to join us because he's at the Capitol, and so Jessica is the better half of him and able to give an update on what's going on. Jessica, it may be a bit freewheeling today because there is a lot going on, but we'd love to hear some updates.
Jessica is the power behind the throne.
Exactly. So it's certainly been a bizarre session, as I'm sure you can imagine, with COVID-19 really changing the way we do committee hearings. I was in a committee this morning and there were only 16 seats available in the room because they distanced all the chairs. So of course, there's a mob of us in the hallway all fighting over the 16 chairs, probably doing more transmission in the hallway than we would in the hearing rooms. So this week, the House actually canceled its entire session because of rising COVID-19 cases in their caucus. They were already going to be off for Martin Luther King Jr. Day on Monday, and they had called only a technical session, meaning they wouldn't do any formal business on the floor on Wednesday, out of a proactive concern, like Scott was talking about, that there might be unrest at the Capitol, which, like he said, turned out to be fairly tame and mild. So we haven't had the House of Representatives in this week, but the Senate has been in, doing some really substantial committee work. I was talking to a staffer yesterday who joked that it's like controversial issue bingo this week. So we had committee hearings on education savings accounts, which are a pretty controversial school choice measure, a Second Amendment Preservation Act to declare firearm laws at the federal level illegal if they infringe on gun rights in Missouri. we heard 7 bills that would restrict the authority of local health entities to enact orders as a response to the COVID-19 restrictions that have become very controversial. And they heard 2 bills on COVID-19 liability to provide protections to healthcare workers, manufacturers of certain products, and business premises from certain lawsuits related to COVID-19. So even though there hasn't been a lot of floor activity in the Senate, it really has been a very busy week in committee with people trying to move issues quickly on the assumption that we don't know how the rest of session is going to go. It's very unclear if this will be the first of many shutdowns or if everything will just have to take longer because we socially distance and move forward more methodically. The other date of note is next Wednesday, Governor Parson is going to give his State of the State address, which is very significant because that will mark the day that he releases the next fiscal year's budget recommendations. And then once we get the budget recommendations from the governor, the House will move forward with their budget proceedings. So that'll be a really important day for us to get a glimpse on what kind, if any, reductions the governor is recommending, any new programs, the general feeling for the budget. And of course, many groups are watching what the governor chooses to do, if he'll put money in for Medicaid expansion funding or choose not to. So that'll be a significant date next week, and we'll get quite a bit of insight into the governor's plans for the budget. The other big news this week is on vaccinations. I'm sure you all have seen in the news that the governor has started phase B tier 1, which is first responders and law enforcement. They became technically eligible for the vaccine last Thursday. And then this Monday, phase B tier 2 became eligible, and that's individuals over 65, as well as those with certain comorbidities like cancer, sickle cell disease, or type 2 diabetes. That announcement, and I hope this has been reflected in news articles as well, came with a really important caveat that there is not nearly enough vaccine to vaccinate all of the individuals who technically became eligible in those phases. In fact, the governor's press release estimated that only 27% of healthcare workers had been vaccinated as of last Thursday. So this is something the state is hopeful that more vaccines are going to start coming in and our distributions are going to get larger, but this isn't something that we should expect to see solved or any sort of panacea in the next couple of weeks. The state on all the vaccinator webinars has been really clear that it's just impossible for them to give a timeline for when doses are going to be coming or when vaccinators can expect it, which I know is causing a lot of frustration. And that's just kind of where we're at. Everyone's generically frustrated about this. The governor also announced that the National Guard is going to work with regional implementation teams on max vaccination campaigns. The first one's supposed to happen in Southeast Missouri fairly soon. But they said it will only be enough to vaccinate about 2,500 people at an event. So we're still talking about low numbers. We're still talking about vaccine shortages. And so I think tempering expectations and expecting frustration is the right course on that. So I should have planned this better so I could end on some sort of like really happy, upbeat note. I don't know that there's anything that happy and upbeat to report right now in the legislature. So I hope that wasn't too much or too little, but that's kind of an overview of where we're at in Jefferson City.
That's great. We appreciate all the info. Questions, anybody? Any follow-up? Yes, Betsy.
Wondering, I saw that Joe Biden signed a federal mask mandate for public buildings, et cetera. And I'm wondering if there's going to be pushback in the state of Missouri or if we're going to comply.
Well, my understanding is that's only applies to federal buildings and land. But we are already seeing pushback against local mask mandates. This part of the 7 bills that they heard yesterday in the Senate committee would make it a lot harder for local public health authorities to enact things like a mandate. Some of them would exempt religious services entirely from mask mandates, distancing requirements, occupancy limits. Others would require those authorities to go through the governing body of the county as a way to either slow that down or provide a check on a mask mandate, a shutdown order, whatever the case may be, right? This is pushback to these generic COVID restrictions. And one of them would just take away the ability of local public health entities to enact those sorts of orders. So I think definitely we're seeing pushback, and those bills are going to be one of the bigger things to watch this session.
Great.
More bad news. Gosh, I'm terrible at this.
You pinch hit and all you're doing is throwing darts at people. Just kidding. Any other follow-up questions? But we very much appreciate you stepping in today, so we didn't have to see that guy again. I already saw him enough this morning. And keep up the good work. And yeah, the news you're delivering isn't bad news from you. You're just the messenger of, in some cases, the wonderful behavior of others, which there's nothing we can do about, but we do appreciate it.
Of course, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Thanks.
You can stay if you want, but I don't know if you want to. All right. General questions, things we need to talk about,
Updates,
updates, whatever.
questions, thoughts? Everybody's just happy to have made it to 2021.
I guess I have another question kind of relating to the masks and the vaccines. Is there any, does anybody else have any thoughts about mandating employees to have the vaccine before they come back to, I'm thinking of when can we open the office? What should the requirements be? And
Betsy, that's actually our topic next week with Bert. So Bert Garland is an HR attorney from Ogletree and Thorpe, and this is one of the things that he has been speaking about, and that a couple people on this call, actually last month, we tried to get him in December, but something came up to have that conversation. There's a difference. Briefly, what I can say is there's a difference between can and should. And I think that what Bert's going to say is, can we? Yes, Missouri is an at-will employer state, so they can do whatever we want. The question is should, and he's going to talk through some of that and answer questions around it from a legal perspective. Yeah. So we'll have a whole hour next week if people want. Yeah, Alan.
Brian, do you know if he's going to be able to address kind of the implementation on I know this is an HR issue more than a legal issue, the COVID PTO, because I know that that is an issue for some folks on whether they have to take their own PTO or they qualify under the CARES Act for the COVID PTO.
That's generally something that we might go to David a little bit, see if he knows anything. Jessica may or may not. We can ask the question, Ellen, and try and see if we can get an answer from him as well. Oftentimes this is where, right, a specific HR kind of expert might be helpful. He may very well be able to delve into that a little bit.
Thanks.
If not, we'll do our best, right? If we don't get an answer, we'll do our best to try and find someone to help get an answer for us. If people have other specific COVID vaccine or whatever vaccine related kinds of questions like that, please get them to me in advance, and I'll get them to Bert so that he's prepared to answer some of them if you guys have specific questions, or can be prepared to have resources available to direct people to. Anything else anybody wants to talk about? Share?
World's greatest babka recipe, anything? No?
Song suggestions apparently for our.
No suggestions for if I load in hold music next time?
Betsy, you had another question?
I do, I'm sorry, it's not really a question. At the light, I just am looking for story sources, and we're doing an issue on camps, and we're looking for people for our website too, who have ways camp was important to them or impacted their lives or anything like that. If you have one or know anybody with a cool camp story, I think Mindy does maybe, if I'm remembering, please reach out to me or Ellen. And we're looking for that. And then in February, we're doing a love issue about all kinds of different love. And we're looking for great love stories, if anybody has one. I am divorced, I do not. So I really need help on that one. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything that they want to bring up? All right, Greg.
All right, well, we will end calls when they need to end, and apparently that is now. So please, if you are so inclined, send in questions in advance related to COVID and HR and vaccine issues. Bert is an amazing labor attorney in town and a member of the board. And let your chairs or your executives, if you're a chair, know, because again, these meetings are open to both. And we look forward to seeing you all next week, and have a good early Shabbos. And Jessica, thanks for pinch hitting this week, and we'll see you all next week.
Betsy, is it the J that you're referring to? You're on mute.
Muted. Betsy, you're muted.
Sorry, no, the light. Sorry, I should have said that. I forgot it wasn't on my thing. But what's your number, Julie, and I'll call you.
My personal cell is 512-796-9393. I think you were talking about camps, and considering my husband is a pulmonologist and I work full time, it's probably a good story about like what the J has offered and how helpful that's been. I don't know if that's the type of thing you're looking for.
Yeah, you know, all kinds of different angles on this. I'll call you right now, so Brian can go about his day, unless you want to talk about it, Brian.
Well, first of all, I love camp. I think that it's the most important Jewish experience that kids can have. And I worked at summer camps from the time I was about 16 until I was like 25. I helped run or manage summer camps. But I don't need to stay on to talk with you guys about it. Why don't you call? And I'm
work at.
Oh, and Joan came on. Joan, the meeting actually just ended. There wasn't a whole lot. There wasn't a whole lot, so we didn't. Next week, Bert Garland is coming on to talk.
Okay, sorry, I got tied up in an issue.
No, that's okay. We were all just about to these last couple people, but there's no reason for us to stay on.
Okay.
Betsy and Julie, thank you guys, and good luck on your call.
Okay, I'll call you. Brian, what camps did you work at?
Okay, see, now I actually I've got to talk to my wife to make sure I can do this, but also Love, I was her boss's boss at the Federation in Minneapolis and did not like each other. And now we're married. I too am divorced, Betsy, but I got remarried. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. So I worked at the Leo Yasinoff Jewish Community Center in Columbus. And then when I graduated with my graduate school degree, I worked at the JCC in Jacksonville, Florida, and ran the teen camps there for, the 3 or 4 years I was there. So until I was like 25, I was going to or working at or running camps for almost my entire life. From the time I was actually 12 or 11, I was going to overnight camp for most summers. So I think camp is a really seminal experience and really important.
Are there any family camps that you would recommend? I had looked at Sabra, like the family camp thing, but it's a weekend we're not able to go this year, and I'm interested. Yeah. My dad wants us to go to Thunderbird because that's where I had gone to camp growing up, and my dad went. But it's a little probably too rustic for my boys who are 6 and 8.
How old are your boys, Julie?
6 and 8.
So look, I moved here from Minneapolis, and Minneapolis does have a small group of kids who goes to the overnight camp there, which is an independent Jewish overnight camp. It's not affiliated with the J. It's called Camp Herzl. It draws a lot from Kansas City, from Minneapolis, Milwaukee, and a small group of people from St. Louis. Actually, one of my sons, I have a 23-year-old son and a 20-year-old son. My 23-year-old son's roommate and best friend is from St. Louis that he met at camp there. So Camp Herzl is a really good option, and they do a really good family camp.
Awesome. It doesn't have to be religious in general. Like I'm not worried about it being a Jewish camp. For us, it's more just about, I'm looking at Camp Pegnita even for the summer because it's outdoors, but I don't even know, is it going to be more of the Kirkwood crowd and my boys are Conway? And, is it going to be the right
It's really interesting. I've served on camp boards. I served on my kids' camp boards for a long time because I think informal educational opportunities like camp, look, having worked at them, being a social worker by training, I think kids grow and change more in 6 or 8 weeks of a summer at camp than they do throughout the rest of the year because you're open to new. And so
Totally.
finding the right fit is really important. So I'm happy to talk a little more about it, but you got to know your kids and what they're comfortable with, what they're willing to do, and what kind of environment they want, because there are big camps, small camps, sports-related camps, outdoor camp, all those kinds of things. Knowing and understanding some of that is really important if they're not just going with their friends to whatever camp they go to and you're looking for an intentional experience that allows you to kind of, then it does take a bit of research, but there are definitely resources through the American Camping Association, ACA is what it's called, which oversees all camps across the United States or North America and stuff. But there are some really great, different, unique kinds of camps, especially if you're not afraid of sending your kids to somewhere that like they have to get on a plane maybe to go to.
Probably not for this summer. They're a little young,
sure.
but
Also, Julie, are you on the Facebook group, the St. Louis Jewish Mamas?
I am.
That's a great question for there.
Yeah.
Look at our issue. Our paper issue is either I think it's going to be in next week. But for both of you, so we're building up our website content. And some of what we're looking for is just people to tell a 30-second to a minute story about camp. We're going to put these up. So I don't know if that's something, but Brian, I'm thinking you might be more content with your having been a director.
Yeah, Betsy, I want to be supportive. I also want to be careful, right? Like because of the position that I sit in, I got to be careful about what I say and how it reflects on different things. My own personal experience and opinion can be really easily conflated with some kind of a direction or decision by the organization. And I just want to be really careful. I'm happy to talk to you.
Conduit of how he met his best friend at camp?
With who?
Your son, who you just said met his friend at camp?
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't live here, but yeah, I mean, he's got a different story too, because we actually lived in Pittsburgh when he was little. Then we moved to Minneapolis, and his best friend and their family decided that they still wanted to see each other. So they started sending their son to Camp Herzl in Minneapolis versus the Pittsburgh JCC camp so that they could spend summers together. And, he went every summer and, developed this whole group of friends that was, way different than the people that he grew up with. But it became their home, their second home is Camp.
I love these camp stories. So Jordan Palmer is the name of the guy who's our digital director now.
Yeah.
Is it okay if I have him send you an email? And
yeah, of course. Yeah.
What's your son's name?
My son, my oldest son is Gabe.
Okay, these are great.
If you start people talking about camp, you can anybody. I mean, I know 4 other stories from like my wife's best friend, but like I'm not going to speak for anyone. But everybody has camp stories. If you've gone to camp, then you have a camp story.
For like not us, so like who had a source from around the community, and like I'm trying to get my niece Lucy Greenbaum, who's the song leader at Sharamit.
Yeah.
But she started her career by being a song leader at Jewish camps and becoming, because we're not that particularly religious, but she has gotten so engaged, she's going to study to be a cantor now.
Well, I mean, you've got also, I mean, we have a very big example of that through an individual who runs Jewish Rock Radio in town, and right,
we're talking to Rick. We're talking
so Rick's wife was very good friends with my sister at Camp Ramah. Like they grew up at Camp Ramah. So I know her, not because of Rick, who I know because of, like he would come to camp later in life, but because I grew up and my sister was good friends with her. And so these stories are all over.
I think she's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
So as parents and 2, full-time working parents and having a husband who's on the front lines, camp has been amazing for us because the kids were home with me from March to June. And then right after July 4th, they started camp at the J. And then the J offered an incredible program where they could do virtual school from there while we continued to work. So
Yeah.
as parents, it's been amazing. And we also enjoy their vacation days. And both
Julie,
kids
what
have
is
made
your
great friends there.
email? And I'll have Jordan reach out to you too, because I'm just the business gal. I don't do the writing or the
Oh,
producing.
got it. So it's been incredible. And I mean, Schatz is another good person, Brad Schottner, who he's awesome. We just love him.
What is your email? So I'll have Jordan reach out and I'll let you both get back to your day.
Sure. My personal email is julie.zuick@gmail.com.
Oh, that's easy. Okay,
In
great.
fact, we also have the camp in Illinois, right? Bernie,
Oh.
why can't I remember the name right now? Bernie Melma, what's it called? The Jewish camp that's
I don't think I know it. I
I
know
don't know it
Gucci
either.
in Indiana.
well, for sure. I used to grow up doing my BBYO weekends at places like Gucci. What's it? But Bernie, what is the name of the camp? The Jew they're part of,
My husband went to like Ramah or something.
I went to Ramah too. When did your husband go there?
I don't know. Scott's 41.
Oh,
So-
he's the same age as my wife who went to Ramah, and they may know each other. They would know each other.
He's from Cherville, Indiana.
Where?
Cherville. It's by
No.
Maryville.
I'm joking.
Okay.
It's Camp Ben Franklin that I'm thinking of, Betsy. You know, Camp Ben Franklin was probably the most creative Jewish camp across the country when COVID hit, and did an entire summer of camp virtually, and it
Wow.
serves as a model that the JCC movement has been working with them on. Serves as a model, and the executive director is sometimes on our calls, not so much lately. He's a really great guy. Let me look up his name. Who I think that you should, in terms of, right, like setting an example. So there, and we consider them an agency of ours. We provide some funding, but also they're just, right, like we're the closest big federation, and so we help support them. It's Aaron Hadley is the director, and he can tell you all about what they did, which was really, and they draw mostly from St. Louis.
Okay.
Cool.
Is it religious Jewish or just culturally Jewish?
I think most all of these that we're talking about are culturally Jewish. I mean, Ramah is obviously a religiously Jewish camp, but all the J and the independent camps like this are culturally Jewish.
Okay. The other camp.
Sabra has a great family camp
Mhm.
and a
She
camp.
said that the dates didn't work for them.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
The other camp that has been amazing for our younger son, but obviously he's in kindergarten now, so can't go there anymore. But TI, Temple Israel, runs a camp, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
And then last year, actually, the camp, they didn't do the camp, and the camp counselors got together and ran a little camp at her house with 8 kids. And it was,
We're talking to all the temples for sure, but we're just looking for individual. So, if you saw Harry Met Sally,
Yeah.
when they had the snippets of the couples telling their story. So that's more of the idea of, individual stories for love, for camp. And so
what is the goal of the piece?
there's a whole issue in the paper to advertise different camps and talk about camp issues. And then on the website, it's more of just community building and more social.
So if it's community building, I would think you'd want like some local folks that are, known in the community, like Brad Schottner would be a good person for that.
Okay, I wrote that down. All right. All right.
If
Thank
the goal is to encourage camp,
you,
it's
Julie.
good to have camper and parent perspectives. So
I agree. I'll have Jordan reach out to you and he'll be excited.
cool.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
guys.
much. Thanks, Brian, for holding.
Everybody have a great week.
You
You
too.
too. Good seeing
Bye-bye.
you guys. Thanks.
Nice seeing you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.